Hey friends, welcome back to the Brink of Reality podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Brink, sitting in the chair as always, here to bring you a very special episode, slightly delayed episode today with the great friend of the podcast, Simon Mee. Look, this is an extended chat. We are going to look back retrospectively through his game, almost kind of bookending that pre-game podcast that we did secretly last year and released before this season. So this is really like a full circle moment conversation for me personally. I hope for Simon as well, and I hope for you as listeners can get some stuff out of this. Being a couple of days removed from the official exit row, I do feel like I can go deeper a little bit with Simon. Probably could have spent 4 or 5 hours, to be honest, but Simon was kind enough to give me a couple of hours to chat to him, and I hope you will really take some nuggets, especially the second half of the podcast. I probably talked a little bit too long about the early stuff in the first hour, but the second hour I think is really strong. So stay tuned for that as well. And let me know your thoughts at BOR Survivor. I would be really keen to hear what you think about this one, especially. This podcast, it means a lot to me personally, specifically this one. So I do say this a lot, but if you can share with your friends to Survivor, people that may like Simon or may want to hear more about the game, I would really genuinely appreciate that. If you like, subscribe. I'm going to post this onto YouTube as well if you want to give it a watch on there, and obviously the podcast feed. So check it out however you want to. That doesn't really bother me, but please check it out. And just a quick one for our listeners as well. Our friends at Snuffed, aka Simon, have hooked us up with a code. So if you're keen to grab some merch, you can use the code Brink30 for 30% off. So that's Brink30 on any Snuffed merch. You can find that at Simon Mee, checking out the links on his Instagram page to find all of that. So you can actually wear one of the cool Snuffed hats that Simon has been wearing through the season. So check that as well. But that's it. I think we're going to get started. I hope you really do enjoy this chat and let me know your thoughts. I will just say before we jump in that watching a friend play Survivor and someone who I have made a friendship through doing this podcast, I am really grateful that I got to see Simon make 100 days. I'm really grateful that I didn't curse him. didn't curse him by doing the preseason podcast, but I am glad that we had a full circle moment, and I think we saw the true evolution of Simon as a player. So I hope you really do enjoy this chat. Clearly fan favorite, Simon Mee. Simon, you are labeled here as Simon the Redeemed. Are you redeemed?
Oh man, Ryan. First of all, it's good to be here. After one hell of a journey, and I think in a word, like yes, I am redeemed. And that's pretty special in itself. I feel like in a season of redemption, where there's only one winner, not many people will actually come out of this redeemed. But it's a really nice way to just tie a bow on my Australian Survivor career. So yeah, it's pretty special to be here.
I love that. And you're right. It's so interesting with Survivor broadly. Everyone has their own motivations and reasons for going to go play the game. But the concept of redemption, like it's a rarity. Most people leave with different kinds of emotions. So the fact that you can sit there, ton up 100 days, and feel that I just as a friend, I appreciate and I'm so grateful that you get to feel that.
For those of you listening, Ryan's wearing a Australian cricket board Australian cricket team one day t-shirt jersey. So to celebrate the 100.
I
so
had to.
That's pretty cool.
I had to wear. This is. When I wear this, I think of Michael Bevan. Like that's my childhood. Even like Brett Lee a little bit. It's like it's perfect, and I had to ton up for you, mate. Like because you obviously gone through this crazy experience, and for time stamping reasons, we're doing this on Good Friday. Your episode aired 2 days ago, and look. I don't even know how are you post the airing of the episode and I guess the culmination of really 3 games right now.
Yeah. To be honest, like on the it was April Fool's Day that I went out on. It was pretty like it was a beautiful week leading into it. And I watched the final episode with my friends and family in the backyard with the projector. Mark and Keeley, Zara and Baden came around, my Survivor Brisbane crew, which was really special. And yeah, it was really nice. And, episode to go out on where, I had my, family visits there, and, Bonnie made a TV debut. That's pretty cool. And then the next day, like, I woke up and, I think, like, I was quite reflective and very much so at peace with everything, but I was able to, like, take time to reflect. And, it wasn't talking about, my moves in the last 24 hours or whatever, but, was able to do all the exits and going through it all was pretty special. Just having a chance to reflect over a pretty incredible Survivor career, for someone who has been through some of the best and worst times of it all. And, I kind of come out feeling like one of the most resilient Survivor players of all time. And it was a really nice moment to just look back on, what it's been for me, what it's meant for me. And the outpouring from the fans has just been incredible. Like, I've just been absolutely overwhelmed. And yeah, like, it just blows my mind that, like, the 2021 version of Simon that we saw in Brains versus Brawn, what I went through in Heroes versus Villains, to how much it meant for me to play this game well, have a couple of really great, social strategic moves. Had an absolute blinder of a challenge series on the way through this one. Like, it was a really nice feather in the cap to go out on this season and to leave with my head held high. So the day after, like, all the exits, I didn't realize how like, this time around has been a lot more manageable for me. It feels like it's been like work as opposed to the big shiny thing, which has been really good to have clarity going into it. But then now this is kind of all over. I still didn't realize how much I was holding on to the not only just emotions and being in the game, which is just taxing. And so I just crashed out on that that Thursday night, last night, which was just amazing. And just knowing that, like, it's all done. I've seen everything. Like, there's no more surprises.
Yeah.
And it's done, and very relieving and grateful.
It's interesting, the 2 points. Firstly, the April Fool's thing, I hadn't actually put 2 and 2 together, but of all the days for Simon Mee to go out, I do.
It could have been April Fool's and going out on rocks as well. So, like, that's not beyond me.
Oh, we will get to that. But
second point, what do you got?
The second point is just the place of gratitude that it holds for you, and I love that it gets to a point where, this is almost like you said. It's like it's become your job a little bit. It's such an interesting thing for you to have experienced and gone through Survivor, because it's been. I know I listened to a couple of your podcasts, and Mike Bloom put it really well on RHAP. He spoke about, year on, year off, year on, year off, year on, year off for Survivor. And it's been that cycle, not only for you, but for your family. And it's probably, when we talk about what the advantages of a returning player on a season like Survivor is, I guess it's kind of having the headset, like, of knowing what to expect after the show. And I don't know if that's something that, when you first played the game, going back to Cloncurry, just after COVID, like, when you're playing the game for the first time, do you even think about, like, how this is going to present itself and look like in the future, or how like big of a role is that? And I guess in terms of where you're at now, because I do really feel as if you played this season with a lot more understanding of the narrative, and you really tried to sell the narrative of what you were trying to do. I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I mean that, like, you're owning your experience.
Yeah, it's very important to understand the narrative and to be able to follow along with that. And I actually feel like that's part of the reason why I was able to narrate my first season in Brains versus Brawn, because I could understand what was going on. I could see everything. Like, I might not have had the best, the best actual gameplay as such, but I was able to be in a position to understand what the layout of the land was. Going back to that time, like, it was very much so. It was all big and shiny, and the adrenal fatigue was huge because everything's so exciting, and then it's on you. You're on, you're off. You're in a waiting tent, and you're playing the game, and just that getting taken out of you versus, like, what it has, like, this time around it's so much more manageable. But I was always very aware of cameras being on, always very aware of, 24 hours a day, anything that you say and do, just like national TV. So, like, just curbing my swearing and just trying to be a little bit more considerate, because like, yeah, I definitely have like an image that I'd like to uphold, just as a person, as a human, and as a role model for my kids. Like, I don't think I was ever mean to anyone, over my kind of time and stuff. Like, there were definitely heated moments, but I don't think it was like ever just outright mean as such. So like, it was that kind of awareness there. It like I couldn't believe there are some people even out from Brainsby Brawn were just like forgot the cameras were around, which is just insane. But you get very comfortable in that environment, and as you spend more time there, and the cellophane comes off, and you can see things with perfect clarity. It becomes a very you're working in a space where within that wavelength that you're used to after you've done it for a couple of times, and it helps you through and be able to do things a little bit easier and seamlessly. And I feel like that's kind of the part of when I say it's like playing with newbies is like cheating. That's the cheating. That's the cheating part.
Yeah, the cheating part is the experience. The cheating part is the knowing. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to come onto this. And we talked about this in the preseason podcast. And I don't know how much I'd really love to know. Like we did that chart, 9 days prior to you playing the show. What did you actually take from that experience? Like, I'm actually curious. This is a self-indulgent question for me, but like,
I
guess in terms of like what helped you with Cam as well, and like not just that chat, but I guess the chats you have with people. Because what I found really interesting about this game for you this time is that you didn't necessarily seek out the advice of former players. You played twice, like what to expect. But I guess what did you take into this? What did you take from those conversations heading into this way? Because I do feel like this was the best Simon Mee game that we saw. I feel like this was all of the great elements of the experiences that you've had in the past, but really honed. I do feel like you shifted in terms of your gameplay. Like, it seemed more social this time. Like, Harry mentions it in my chat with him earlier in the season, where it's like, man, like I've never seen someone like kiss ass, but in a really good way, like in a way where it's like working so bloody hard to make sure that so freaking hard to make sure every relationship is there. Like the work ethic at camp was there. Like it seemed like you just leveled up even more.
Yeah. Look, doing that podcast with you is one of the best things I've ever done. The best single piece of preparation that I have ever done for a game of Survivor. Better than any training in the gym you could do. Better than any game you could ever play. Like, it was incredible just to get my head in the game and really think about, like, just question some things that I weren't particularly on my radar, but to be able to voice where I was at and have a really great sounding board with yourself and Cam about, where I was, what my plan was going in. And I also hadn't had a lot of time to, my family and friends as such weren't like, they're not that sounding board. Like, I can't go to them and speak as much about Survivor. It's like Survivor needs to be an isolated thing because it's taken up so much of their lives, and it doesn't need to. So it was really, really great. And I felt like the really big outcome that I got from that chat with you was like just how important setting myself up was going to be in this game. So then it became twofold of just having that clarity and that understanding, and then the motivation of being out there and being away from my family and what they have sacrificed for me to go out and do this for a third time was, I'm not going to waste a single moment out here. I don't need to sleep. I can sleep when I'm dead, sleep when I'm voted out. Like, I will do everything that I can. And, I can't remember how many times I said in confessionals, like, my strategy coming in, outwit, outplay, outlast, outwork. I will outwork everyone on this beach. And I absolutely kissed ass and worked my ass off, like physically around camp, doing the fire, like socially to build a relationship with absolutely everyone in the tribe. And I did it as soon as I can, and as hard as I can, and as in depth as I could, to make sure that I had that relationship with everyone. So when my name got floated there was a potential movement against the returnees or something, that the person who floated my name to that person hearing it had a relationship with me, and I added value to their game. Not just I can win challenges for the tribe, but in a way that was like, I want to keep him around. And I did that with everyone, and it was so well embedded in the tribe. It just worked perfectly to my advantage. And I am hearing a compliment like that from Harry in his exit, and Harry has told me like multiple times that he has never seen anyone work so hard in a game of Survivor, was really it was I was really quite emotional like hearing that, and I was so proud of what I had achieved. And we heard the same thing in Paula's exit. I heard a beautiful thing in Daniel's exit where he said that he felt like I was on the bottom of the tribe because I was just around. All I did was stay around camp and was like the last one to know information. And I was so happy to hear that, because that's exactly the perception that I and strategize to go out and execute. And it's the perception that those people had. So like, that's all I could ask for.
I love that. And it's so interesting to go in with a game plan, but to actually play it out there and for it to come into effect is so hard. And like, I'm sure there were things that you thought about pre-game that shifted. And I guess one of those big things is like when you head and you land day one and you're out there and you're meeting these people, did things shift in terms of your initial thoughts around how this game is going to be played? Because obviously every season is so different depending on the cast that you're out there.
I think there are elements of like, there are things you can strategize for and things you can't. Like, I think the one thing we spoke about in our pre-podcast is that, sometimes you can only play once you see the cards that are in your hand, and then you can only be reactive or proactive from that point. But something like, establishing how you're going to work socially, like that's a strategy that you can use going in, and like that, that's fine. And I think like you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to, move when you need to. But I think the kind of the big things were like, outworking and just working so hard, strategically. And then another really big thing that like from a strategic point of view was we spoke about, in a season that I win, the oldest female doesn't go home first. And how can I use that person as a bit of a bargaining chip and a lever that I can pull and negotiate with when I needed to kind of show that I'm willing to compromise and not. And I think I really pulled that off really, really well with Loz in this season here. And that made a huge difference. There was one more part of that question that I think
No, that's okay. That's an interesting one as well. It like asks like a sub question. This is a bit self-indulgent as well, but did you get any feedback then from like the podcast we did was, very different to like what a lot of people normally have in the preseason. It's your thoughts coming out. We question whether we'd post it or not originally. I love that you did. So thank you, man, for letting us share that cool. and get into it. Loz, like you talk about Loz there. She's such a big one for you, right? Because
huge. We talk part of my game.
And we talk about that, and I'm sure it's not completely seen throughout. But like, do I don't know? Do people question like, hey, like that's me, like that's the game plan you had, and that's me you targeted? Like, is that really come through?
Yeah, I think. Look, I have a lot of respect for Loz, like and for anyone as a player, and like it's not easy. I obviously had a loaded relationship with Loz out there as well. Like we were so close, and people really didn't see that, just how, and from my perspective, just how much that I was her bridge to so many ins and relationships. Like there was a moment where she said to Ben and Jackson that we haven't really spoken that much, but she was part of Beauty and the Beast. But that whole thing was held together through me, like that was really like, that really happened the whole way throughout, especially that early game. And then, our big downfall was when I voted Rich out. That's when it really severed that bridge there. So we kind of left the game and had a bit of a fractured relationship. And, Loz has has done a lot of, gone through a lot in the, post game, just getting her head back to reality, which is a tough spot for anyone going through it.
Yeah.
But then on the off the back of that, where was I going with this one?
No, it's hard. It's so hard. We still got to see how the game plays out as well for people as well.
She listened to, like, once we released that podcast before it came out, she listened to it. So I had heard that it was that was a difficult thing for her to wrap her head around. And just to to hear something about you filling a she was a card in my hand, and that to end up being her face card, like, yeah, it's kind of difficult. But then at the end of the day, like, it is a game, and people do have strategies, and it's like it's nothing personal. It's not personal. But so I hope that added a little bit of like context there into my approach overall. And yeah, like, and for me personally, like I'm just like I'm stoked that I came up with was able to execute a strategy so well that worked for me so well for so much of that early part of the game.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's such a hard one. We all go into the games in general with like preconceived strategies around it. Yours was one of those strategies, and it's interesting. We talked about like who might be out there. That was a really fascinating one. You end up with Harry as the person who's out there with you, which is cool because it seems like you guys like were close and you had to make a pretty hard call early on in the game. But what was it like to have Harry like on your beach with you, and how did that connection kind of come across for you out there?
Yeah, having Harry out there with me was huge. It was so relieving that the person that I had on, or the returnee that I had on the beach, was a friend, someone who I knew what he's kind of what I knew his journey, but we didn't have any like in-game relationships. So it'd been different seasons, so there was nothing, like no overhang there, which was really cool. And yeah, Harry, like, he came to play. So I saw him and I was excited, like very excited there, and we just got along. And I feel like again in our pre-game podcast we spoke about, what does this look like in terms of, do we want cohesion or do we want division? And Harry was very much so about cohesion. Like, he really wanted everyone together there, and we were kind of able to divide and conquer a little bit. And we definitely picked up that very early on there were always whispers about returnees. Like, even though we were outside the numbers and not a threat, which kind of worked in our favor a little bit, but there was always like, we want the returnees gone. And Harry and I, we didn't spend that much time together, which is a like bit of a regret. It's a soft regret. Like, I would have loved to spend more time just hanging out with him, and we certainly had our moments. But like, I would have like, if it was a holiday, we would have been like inseparable. You know what I mean? But like, we knew it was better for both of us to not spend as much time together, and that's where we're able to like divide and conquer. We have our chats at night time, and catch up then when everyone else was sleeping. And it was a great relationship that we had, and I'm very thankful for it. And I mean, there was that moment very early on in the game where I make the Boston Rob comment. I feel like Boston Rob, and that was probably like, that was one of the highlights of my game. The fact that I had sat in a position and established myself so well in that tribe with all the people that I just spoke about before, that like, I had so many people coming to me with information. I had so many people like asking me like questions, or telling me who was moving around and doing what. And by putting myself on house arrest, by just being around the fire and not running around the jungle looking for idols, like, it became a safe place for people to come to me. And then you'll be able to have the information coming through Harry's side as well. We were able to sort of triangulate stuff and piece together what was going on. It was truly incredible. And there was a 24-hour period where I went like, yeah, holy shit, I actually am doing this. And I did feel like Boston Rob for that time, knowing that it wasn't going to last forever. Like, it was impossible, but like, it was just a really, really, really special time. I went like, holy shit, I might actually be able to do this. Like, I might be able to make it through to tribe swap, to merge. Like, I might not go out first. Or I think it was after Daniel, so I might not go out early.
Yeah, but still early. I get it. It's it's a unique one in terms of you playing the game differently, because obviously, like, in the past you'd like find idols and found cookie idols and done other things that have been like huge, and this time you kind of locked yourself on camp and were just focusing there. Did that feel different for you as well in terms of being like anchored?
Being anchored to camp was such an important important strategy. Like, and yes, like, the idols and stuff are, obviously fantastic for me last season, but I needed to be seen as a safe set of hands, so I couldn't be seen to be running around the jungle. I couldn't be seen to be, looking out for idols or advantages. I had to just like sit back, just make the fire, keep the fire going, let everyone feel comfortable, and I just became a known entity. And it's that Tony Vachos, on the house arrest, just hanging out there, and I felt like I became approachable to people. And I also, I think playing for a second time to then play for a third time with newbies, it's not just a returnee, but you become a very experienced player. Like, I've done that before. So I became like a wealth of knowledge that I tried to help people with. And I didn't want to be outward or lecture them or tell them how to do things. But if they asked, I was there for it. And quite often I just would try to do things silently. Like, I wasn't ordering people around. I would lead by example and just by doing. And then people I became a leader in the way that people would follow my example. So that's kind of like where it worked really well for me. But the difference was, the difference that I felt from this starting tribe compared to my last two were the fact that everyone was really appreciative of that, and they saw value in me providing value to them. There was no one, I didn't have an antagonist behind me that was pushing me into that leadership role like Danny was the first time around. Like, she was very clear that her strategy going in was to make the alpha male's leadership known. So she was holding me up in lights to highlight that to everyone. And in Heroes versus Villains, I had, George always just, in people's ears behind their back, kind of, just chipping away at me and chirping me from the jungles and from the shadows. Yeah. So that was difficult there, but it genuinely, everyone just appreciated what I was doing for them. And like, it was such a huge difference. And I think and then I'll tie back into what the impact of winning that shelter was at the start.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, the bounty baron concept, like, this comes back from Survivor Fiji way back in the day, Survivor 14, and like having that as a twist to start the game. Like, what impact does that have, like, in terms of the startup? Because your role in, I guess, in terms of like quotation marks setting up tribe is a little bit different if the tribe's already set up.
Yeah.
Millions of popping.
As a strong male who is also a carpenter, a builder, a chippy, I have quite a big just general responsibility to get in and just get the shelter made. And like, it's something that I do anyway. I think it's so important that gets set up, and you can bond over that. But then a lot of other times you have people who have no interest in setting up the shelter, and they run off and scatter into the jungle and talk strat. So there's going to be quite a division in the tribe. But the impact of winning that shelter at the start really set the tone for our tribe, where we had opportunity to like sit down and settle in and just get to know each other and create these really like just genuine relaxed bonds in a way that like there wasn't we've got to go out and get stuff done, but this is hard and I can't keep an eye on like what's happening. So it was like I place a lot of responsibility on that winning that shelter for what it kind of did for my game and the overall I guess vibe of the tribe. Like, I've been on 8 tribes now, and every time has its own vibe, its own feeling. And whether it's a toxic person that kind of spreads through a tribe, whether it's like a late night, everyone only wants to talk about their sex lives or something, like, or it can be something like I don't know, if there's a group that valued travel a lot, they can be these conversations that kind of come up, and everyone talks a lot about that. But this really like enabled a really harmonious tribe and really set up the early stages of the game for it was like, who are we bringing in as opposed to who are we voting out of this game?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because like obviously bounty goes to, what is it, 4 of the first 5?
4 of the first 5, and then essentially 4 of the first 4 of them before tribe swap, which was just heartbreaking and just showed signs of my villains run at in Heroes versus Villains, which essentially ended up screwing me later in the game. I just getting a break early on, like be able to get through to tribe swap pretty unscathed. I mean, it's nice to have tested relationships, but it's like it can be pretty debilitating. But yeah, 4 or 5 first
trials. 4 or 5 but 4 or 5 is a lot, and it's funny. I find it interesting because you talk about like how it helped camp life, but then the outcomes of the immunity challenges was the opposite. Like it led to you guys not necessarily having that capacity. So I don't know. It's a really juxtaposition and to do that early. Like in those early games, you just talk about those relationships that you were like fostering and building as well.
Yeah. So early game for me, it was like Harry was my number one. I then created a very like Lottie and I just seemed to gel so quickly, so fast. And she's just an absolute legend. So we just we just see life very similarly. And we also, as young parents, like saw the game in a very similar way, where like we weren't there to muck around. Like we were there to seriously make the most of this opportunity and absolutely go for it. And I think that's why, Lottie just was so keen to play from the start. And then, I think a really important 4 for me there was Harry formed a really close relationship with Paula. And then, I was close with Harry, and Lottie and Paula were kind of really close as well. So that was kind of like my core 4. Then over on the side, like we had Lyndall and Loz. And I felt like I was like, Loz, I was Loz's number one. Like I spent a lot of time protecting her at the start. Like I didn't want, when we were all having those first conversations and negotiations, like I was like, Loz, I don't want Loz going home. Like I know she's an easy pick off, but I don't, and so that got shut down immediately. That she probably would have been the first boot. Like if, it was her name would. I mean, she copped some stray votes, right? But I said like she can't be the one over Daniel.
And like she could have been easily like an archetype. Like that archetype is one that goes out first all the time.
100%, and that's why it became a great bargaining chip for me. But then her relationship with Lyndall and Lyndall, Harry, myself, and Loz were all in a SHAP group together. And the SHAP groups always make have a big impact. We were actually the only SHAP group as well that were all on the same tribe. So there was it became a bit of an easy 4 to like kind of get going. But Harry had fractured that a little bit after he threw that extra vote on Loz to get in with Jackson there. And then on the other side of the tribe, because I don't feel there was a hierarchy. It was more of a flat line with clusters, depending on where it kind of swung. And the closer you were to the middle, the higher you were in the bell curve, essentially.
Yeah.
So it was like Loz and Lyndall over one side with Harry, Paula, Lottie, myself there. And then Arsha and Cameron were a tight 2 from the start. Rich floated between Lottie, Arsh, myself, and Loz. But a very pivotal point of the game, I initially had identified Rich as he will be not public enemy number 1, but he will be the guy. He will be the guy to beat this season. Like he had all the tools, the knowledge of the game and stuff like that. He had the social relationships, and just never took the lead there on the early days. Was happy like being with the with the numbers and with the group there, but had so much like dangerous potential to, if he wanted to like lead from the front, that he could have and would have been huge. And then Jackson and Eliza were back over the other side. That they kind of were drawn to each other, but Harry had a special relationship with Jackson, and so did I. And Eliza kind of was like, she was doing a similar thing to me, trying to get in with a lot of different people, but never really landed. I never really landed the in-depth conversations that she was hoping to. But very good at like giving a lot of herself, but giving a lot of listening, but not giving much back herself. And she was trying to play down her persona, which I think kind of worked against her favor there. So that it was a complex tribe, but it was still operating in a simple kind of way, where it was like, don't upset the apple cart. And yeah, and as we kind of went on, it kind of emerged that Lottie, Paula, and Arsha were the big social decision makers, and Arsha never realized how much power that she really had. She obviously knew she had Cameron, but she didn't realize the influence that she had over Rich and then Lottie, and and then the wider flow-on effects of that as well. So that was quite, she had a lot of blindness there on that part. And then for of this kind of group, and as the game kind of progressed, we carved Daniel from the outside, we carved Eliza from the outside as well. It then kind of came down to my core four of Harry, Lottie, Paula, and myself. And we kind of Harry and I sat on the two sides of a diamond, then Paula and Lottie sat on the top and bottom. And we were there was always benefit in one of us going home for the other one to kind of almost gain a little bit of power within the group. If Paula takes me out, she gets Lottie to herself and she gets Harry to herself. And so Paula was I really felt like Paula was the only one who saw through my bullshit of just how hard I was working and kissing ass. She was appreciative of it, but she just never could really trust me there as much. And I wanted to work with her as much as I possibly could. And so Lottie and her had a very close relationship, and Paula was always very much so trying to, and Lottie was warning me that, Paula always was questioning me, and it wasn't quite a relationship that was being driven home. And then when, whether my name did or didn't come out, and I've heard from other sources that my name was floated, on that kind of Paula vote, that, it made sense for her to go, because when people like, Arsha and Cameron were hearing that, I was still of value to them. So I actually ended up being the one who benefited the most from that, and so did Lottie after Paula went home. So, and that kind of set up the rest of the tribe from there, I felt. And that's when it kind of became pretty clear about, who was in charge and who was leading it from there.
Yeah, it's interesting at those early votes. People sometimes think, early votes don't really matter, but these early votes, especially the Paula one, you're 100% accurate. In the podcast I do with her, I don't know how much or if you listen to that at all, but
100%. I caught them all.
Yeah, and she 100% was not with you, and I think the way you describe it as almost that diamond shape is very accurate. And it's she saw the benefit in the other players that you were aligned with, but not with you necessarily. She didn't want necessarily to be with you. And so having to make a hard call against someone like Paula, who I think is a really top level potential survivor player. I think she's a very good player and could have easily, had she gets through, she could have done good things to this game. And it's so interesting, because then, that creates that wedge with Harry as well, and it breaks that relationship. And it's hard in Survivor when, you're trying to keep relationships that you think could be positive for you, but then you ultimately have to go against them, because the majority of the people that you can work with moving forward is going to have a far larger, I don't know, advantage. It's as you said a lot, it's right. You got to ride the lightning at points, and you had to ride it through that.
And I really I understood how valuable Paula was for my game and my relationship there, and that's why, even I know that she knew, I felt that she was sketchy on me, but if I had have landed that, and I worked so hard to try to convince her, but almost the harder I worked to genuinely want it to work, it was kind of getting away from me, and I'm I can't. You can't change someone's preconceived ideas on a returning player like that. It becomes really hard. And Paula, she really did get the game very well and very quickly. But there are some things her, she swore like a truck driver, and her camera awareness wasn't great. She always had the back to camera, and have no idea about camera management was probably a huge one for her. And I feel there are a couple of bits she could refine if she ever went back to really hit her stride. But she had a huge potential there.
Yeah, that's funny. They say the same thing about Elle Rowland in the first season of Survivor. Great game player, would have seen a lot more, but didn't get it was a game show, didn't get it was a TV show, and swore nonstop. Like it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
it's so funny. Like you have these players. Even the Eliza one though. Like I don't want to touch. I didn't actually intend to talk too much about the early, but the Eliza
Yeah,
one's
right.
fascinating because for me, like that's what day 7, and
Yeah.
you eventually get Ben out on day 34, and Jackson is the glue between two of those people at points. And I think there's a real line through there where, you know, the relationship and trust stuff is tested early and then rebuilt from that point on to get to day 34, which we'll talk about later as well. But like that Jackson connection early on, like the seeds of what happened later in the game, they're there. Like that's where it starts. That's where the relationship
100%.
starts, and it's tested. It's not just in the moment Jackson making a decision. Like it's these are the early seeds that you know, start to make a person make decisions they're going to make like a month almost later in the game.
And after Eliza went home, you know, and I voted against Eliza, like, you know, Harry obviously changed his vote to try to get back in with Jackson. But like there was definitely a bit of a Simon, Harry, Jackson thing going on. It was Jackson and Harry were definitely like, you know, closer than me, but I was the one who benefited the most after, you know, having both of those people out of the game. That like Jackson was kind of there with me. Like, you know, we were kind of tight there. The big boys were able to like, you know, bro out a little bit and stuff. And I can lean into that when I need to now. And it worked out really well. And when we came to tribe swap, like we kind of saw, you know, even Lottie and Ash, like we're kind of questioning Jackson, and we kind of like didn't want him around as much. But like, you know, that relationship sat with me then. So, you know, after having that set up there and going through that together, like Jackson was always pivotal for my game. And that comes with, you know, I've let him down a couple of times at the start, but it came with so much time and investment into, you know, damage control to bring him back into the fold. And, you know, every time I managed to get there, and, you know, because I never gave up on it. I never gave up on any relationships. It just never worth it. Like it's always worth trying. And I think that's the experience of a returning player.
Yeah, I think it's so easy in Survivor to like just completely write someone off because they don't vote with you in a moment, and it's like this game is so long. You've got to keep those relationships open. And I think I was thinking about this recently with US Survivor. I won't spoil what's happening, but there's a historical character who had stuff go against him, and it's like, yeah, but you've got to reflect on the next vote now. Like you can't just live in the pain of that vote. You need to keep moving through. And it's funny because you're right. You take out Eliza, you take out Harry, who are his key cogs in this early like part of the game, and it leaves him with nothing but you. The Harry one we haven't really touched on yet, but having to make the call for Harry, like we saw the emotion around voting for Harry early in the game.
Yeah.
Do you think others got it? Because it's interesting, like watching the edited TV product of what we see. Yeah, I find it fascinating, like seeing, like I'll like name like Aisha, for example. Asha's like there, and she's like, I think she doesn't quite get the full story that's being told there, and that's like I found that a bit jarring as a fan. Like, just like you can revel, but like it's also you have to understand the full picture of what this story is for someone like Harry, who's a legacy Survivor player. Like it's not just a regular. It's not no disrespect to Dan, who's the first person out, but it's like it's a huge call to take out someone like Harry in this moment.
I really don't think that a lot of the newbie players understood the enormity of the experience that they were going through. And I think that was quite evident when you have those moments like, you know, Harry going out and just how serious and emotional that was. And, you know, for me, like voting my best friend out, but ending his journey, like I know what it means to me, and like I know what it means to him, but like other people just don't have that appreciation yet, especially players who don't have that, you know, an in-depth relationship with Survivor and the show for, you know, a long period of time. So it was, you know, it hurts a little bit, like, you know, watching that back and seeing people just not quite getting it. But it was also quite evident that like people didn't really realize the enormity of reaching 100 days as well, and like what that meant to me. And you know, as someone who was a pre-merger, like in the first season, who never thought they'd have a chance of making merge, you know, who never thought I'd ever get that again to actually go back and, you know, reach such a milestone. I really feel like a lot of the cast understand that now. But I think what makes a really good player is those who understand it and grasp that concept the first time around. It was really hard with voting out Harry at that point. Like, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But at the same time, it was so much so like the right decision. And I knew that this time around, I wasn't even torn between like head and heart. Like, they were just two different separate things. And like, logically, it's like, well, Harry, I can't save him, and I'm not going to stick my neck out to sacrifice my own game just for his there.
Yeah. It's unfair. Like, I think you came into this game pretty clearly like, hey, I'm going to play my own game. This is for me. This is for, your family. Like, this is the reason that I'm playing. It's for my family. I'm playing to win for them. And that's probably a broader question as well, is you're playing this game as a dad for the first time. We see it obviously in the final episode as well, where Bond has a Survivor debut. But what was that like this time? And did you feel it more than you expected to feel it when you were away from fam than you expected?
Yeah, being a dad, that definitely made it hard, just knowing what was at home and what I was walking away from. Because anyone who has kids knows the absolute mental load, physical load of what it is to be a parent, and then to do that. You set up a life, you set up a lifestyle that there are two of you involved in that, and then all of a sudden one person goes away. I like, as much as I think there's that element there of playing for your family, of if you win the money, like what that obviously does for you. But like, I was playing to make them proud, but I was like, it was selfish. Like, I was still playing for me. Like, but I valued the sacrifice that they had given me to go away and to live out this dream for a third time, and to play this game. And I always said, like, I was always playing for the title, never the money, and I would always also play this game if it wasn't ever on TV. Like, it's just so magical to go out and live this simulation, which is so much fun. But yeah, I was very much so motivated to make the most of the moments and most of the time. And I felt like that was a really good mind frame to go in, to ensure that I did everything that I could with the opportunities that I had, whether it be the time on screen, whether it be the little moments of winning challenges, or like, talking to myself while I'm climbing up the scaff, or giving another speech while I'm getting an immunity necklace. And like, it's just soaking up every single moment and making the most of every single second. Because I think I'm not sure if you saw my Reddit post the other day, the AMA that I put up, but I just said that, like, I knew that back in the day I took the spot of another fan who could have had a shot at it, and I was always going to make the most of that for them, for me, to make everyone proud of the fan that got their shot.
Yeah. Like 100%. And I haven't read the Reddit thread yet. My life has been chaos, but I will definitely go check that out over the long weekend. And it's so interesting in terms of just, you've got this shot, you've got to play it the way you got to play it for more than, your family. You got to play it for you as well. It's okay to be selfish in this moment and say, hey, I want this. I want the title of Soul Survivor. And I think that's probably why I think lots of people have connected to you. I'm grateful that you got to have this experience. It wasn't, your first season where you could have gone out pretty early. And the narrative around Simon Mee is so different than compared to that. Crazy. Even in Heroes and Villains, man, like, you could have gone out in that episode 7 crazy episode, the best tribal cards of all time episode. Like, had you gone out at those junctures, the story that's told is it's not told. Like, we don't have the art for you, man. And so I think, like, your worth to the franchise is probably bigger than you realize, but I think it's really, like, enormous. And in a week where we're watching Survivor 50 as well, and they got these icons that come back and play, like, I think in Australian Survivor, like, I know people are like, oh, Rise Up Blowing Smoke, but I think you are actually up there now as one of those, like, real staples of this is when we think of Australian Survivor, like, and you make your top 10 list, like, I've got my Survivor pyramid. Like, you're someone who's in there now. Like, you're in that echelon, man. And which is a weird thing for a guy who could have gone very easy, was against Benny, like, on like at any point. So, like, it's crazy. Like, So
Yeah.
like it's crazy how like sliding door moments shift that. And you talk about like the Operation 99 a little bit and the 100. Like it's such a big thing to make 100 days. I said this to you privately and I'll say it publicly as well. I actually think you've made it more of a thing, which I think is amazing. And I think it
Yeah.
needs to be
100%.
highlighted. I think it needs to be recognized. And not many people win Survivor in
And
Australian
yeah.
Survivor ever. So to make it more of a thing is so important.
And I'm absolutely honored to get there. But I feel like I'm not taking it away from Brooke, but it meant I felt like it meant so much more to me as someone who missed merge in their first season, who never knew what it was like to, I just thought that thought of ever playing again and being sitting at the end of Final Tribal Council, whether I was, if I couldn't be pitching, at least casting a vote to see out the entirety of the game was kind of like this huge milestone that I just never got to hit. So, that's why you're making merge in that second time around was so big for me and so emotional. And then just knowing that was there, to make merge in a season that everyone wanted the returnees gone was so huge. So I don't know. I held that very close to my heart. And I really think that like no one in Australian Survivor has gone through more. Like everyone has like it's tough. Like don't get me wrong, but like we've seen very consistent characters on the way through, but no one has gone through a wilder journey than me. And I feel like the ups and the downs, to spend so much time on the bottom and be able to fight my way or drag my way through the mud and keep myself alive and turn up every day with a smile on my face. Like I can quite easily call myself the most resilient Survivor player of Australian Survivor player of all time, which is pretty special. And like I was very, I guess, self-aware that when Australia versus the world kind of came around, that like if it was a full season, I had hoped that my name would have been in the mix, but when it was a half season, like probably not there. But I can really feel it now that like I mean there were conversations happening this week about Australian Survivor Mount Rushmore, and like my name's getting thrown around there, which is pretty special. And for the guy who walked onto the Outback Plains in Cloncurry, like that is absolutely not lost on me. The fact that I've gotten there. It's still a bit of a pinch me moment, but like it's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it is super cool. And that's what I love about the Survivor community is that we can all have different opinions on like different people, and I'm sure you've had the gamut, and it's interesting. That's not a question I was going to ask you, but I will ask you like the gamut of people who reach out to you now. Like I do love, you've spoken about retirement, we'll talk about it at the end, but the retirement of Simon from Survivor and to have gone through the wave of being, the villain originally, maybe a hero, then a villain again, officially in title on the last season, back to, I think, a hero in this moment. You've had the real like face turns, like to use wrestling analogies, you've been a heel and then you've been the good guy. And it's like, how do you feel like you've been received by people more broadly, and how has that been for you? Because I'm sure that's been a roller coaster of mixed emotions at periods of times, depending on episodes that are airing at a time.
Yeah. Look, and I actually don't think I've done anything differently over the time. Like, I just think like over a long enough period of time, if you're able to really see the real Simon, and you probably got to see a bit more of like the goofy, self-deprecating Simon, like leaning into my failures and everything, a little bit more. So like it's still 1.0 to 3.0, like it's still been the same old Simon, but I just can't believe that story's been told and has just changed so much. It is wild going through it all. And I think there's probably like one comment that I see that's really popped up quite a lot this season, and especially over the last 48 hours, is like, I really can't believe that here I am on my couch crying over Simon getting eliminated compared to the Simon I met in 2021. Like it just, and having the audience come along for that journey. Yeah, it's wild. But like, I love this game, right? And it's the fans that make this game. And it's so nice to be like, I've had my story told every single season. Like I've been in the top number of confessional count, like each season, which has been really, really special. And I don't mind being cheered against or love being cheered for, but like it's having people cheer for you either way and making the audience feel something is very special. But then like something else that's kind of struck me like this week is seeing that a lot of people have said that they see themselves in me, like the bumbling, fumbling guy, the nerd stuck in this dog's body, trying to make their way through. And it's been far from perfect, but it's been fun and it's been enjoyable. And I think that resilience is like resonates where it's like, I dust myself off and I go at it again and I just try. And it's been really nice seeing the reception that I have got from the fans. Unbelievable. So like, I'm blown away.
Let me ask you about something that came up this season was, the concept of Simon throwing challenges. I thought that was a really interesting story arc because I have said to people, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, so please feel free to push back. I've watched you play, and I'm like, Simon's a competitive beast. Like, I can't see him willingly throwing challenges. And obviously, we had like the fire situation where you've got literally both sides saying throw the challenge their own means, and the challenge with Mark as well. Can you talk a little about like I guess the fire is probably the bigger one in a moment, but the concept of throwing a challenge for you, is that something you would do, or am I wrong? I'm happy to be wrong. Like, would you throw a challenge if the right situation arose, or like, are you adamant like you will compete to the end?
I love this concept. And let me start by saying, I think it's really important to believe in something and to stand for something. And I love the fact that my character stands for not throwing challenges. I love the fact that because there are so many casual viewers out there as well who hate challenges getting thrown. It's such the big part of what makes Australian Survivor so good, right? That I'm the guy that they go, Simon will never throw a challenge, you idiots. Like, why
literally what I'm saying to people. Simon will never, like, I was saying to someone, like, in terms of the ranking of throwing challenges, I would have Lee Castledine pretty high up there as someone who I don't think. I'm like, I actually think Simon is like, I feel like Lee might at a point, maybe if there was something that was happening, maybe he might. Simon, I don't know. He's just, it's not even that about the throwing challenge. You just like to win. Like, you demonstrated that. Like, that's part of the story that you'd have, is that you like winning.
Yeah. And look, I think that all of those kind of moments there for me was like, I was able to, like, I chose not to throw because, I could hand over the necklace, save my entire tribe. And like, I could have, stayed at the, lost fire, stayed there, and we could have blindsided Ash, like, and thinking that could have been good. But, Ash had, Ash ended up having an idol. Like, stranger things have kind of happened, like, just things don't always go according to plan. And I do truly believe that the more time spent away from tribal council, the better. With the, when I could have dropped the basket, the coconuts there, we would have had Keely on she was a sitting duck, and we could have just smoked her, straight out of the game. She ended up being one of the best things that happened to my game, by when teaming up with her. Like, I would have been screwed without her come merge. So it's funny, these things, how, you make these decisions and then you see the implications of them. But 100%, I would throw a challenge in the right scenario for the right circumstance. But look, I am retired, I am done. But if I were ever to go back, it'd be pretty funny to it'd be like, oh, Simon's never going to throw a challenge, but then you could actually go ahead and do that and have another trick up my sleeve or whatever. So it's funny. Yeah, I love the idea of I'm the guy who just won't ever do it. But I think there's just so much consideration that needs to go into into actually throwing it in the first place. And as much as I love standing for that as well, I am also very proud of the fact that I was able to make, I wasn't the one who threw the challenge to get out Arsha. I made Arsha throw the challenge to blindside her and send her home, and to make a poetic example of her. Like, that was really cool, and something that I'm proud of the way I was able to orchestrate that as it was in line with my character as well as being poetic at the same time.
It brings me on to the Lottie relationship. We touched on it briefly. I
Yeah.
have not been shy in the podcast and saying I love Lottie. I think she's an
Yeah, I know.
incredible
She
newbie
is.
survivor player, and I was a bit sad that I didn't get to do the exit with her. But I think she's a really strong player, and there's a divergence somewhere along the line where the relationships that you're trying to build moving deeper into the game are shifting in my perspective, and that relationship comes to a point where you have to make a call. Can you talk about Lottie, and then I know you have a little bit already, but talk about Lottie and I guess having to effectively break up with Lottie in the game. Like you effectively had to break up with her in the game, and how you had to do that, because I think it wasn't necessarily an easy call to make, but it is one you did decide to do.
Yeah. Lottie is an absolute legend. Like we get along so well. She was a really great player for a newbie to like just see the game so quickly, to understand it. She wasn't a huge fan. Loved a couple of watched a couple of seasons and loved it. Asked to get on and still had to apply and everything. So like, it was there for her. And I love that. But she just got it. And we were having these moments where we just understood that there were so many people asleep at the wheel. And she was so blunt, like calling a spade. And just her immediate knowledge and foresight, and you could see the game so clearly. It was super incredible because not everyone has that skill and ability in their first season. So absolute props to her there. She had so much influence. Like her social game was incredible. To go to a physical game, she needs to give herself some credit. Like she, says that she didn't need to, she really, relied on me to get her through the challenges, but like she held her own. Like she was fine. Like she was definitely not dragging the ball. So like, yeah, Lottie, the challenge beast, like, yeah, I'll stand by that. But yeah, our relationship was like worked so well that we were able to kind of, look out for each other and keep each other in check. And we're very much so was open and sharing a lot of information and truth about where we thought the people were sitting and stuff like that. Like, she was my sounding board to help me understand where Paula's head was at the entire first however many days in the game that it was with Paula. So, I could feel my direct relationship with Paula, but it was really being rebounded by Lottie far before even she, if she decided to make that play to play me to get Paula out to, for her to benefit as well. But like it, there was like at the time when those conversations started, there was awareness there for that to happen, to benefit the both of us, which was really cool. Unfortunately, like where it fell down for us was like when we obviously hit the tribe swap. We came into it there, and Lottie and Ash had a really tight relationship. I felt like I was still Lottie's number one because Ash and Cameron were like a tight pairing there, but Lottie and Ash were very tight. And then like from that moment, Ash, like when Ash had the blinkers on, like all she wanted to do was get rid of Brooke, being a turning player, a challenge beast, and like if you look at archetypes, they have a lot of overlap in terms of what they kind of do in the challenge space there. So Ash was just so hell bent on taking out Brooke, and then there wasn't any consideration there. And Lottie was very much so just on board with that. It became like black and white for a lot of them, and like that's when I really started to question my position within that alliance. That it was like Arsha, Lottie, and Cameron almost made that decision as soon as we hit the beach, and then it was myself, Loz, and Jackson that the decision was told like this. There was no questions asked about what we thought, what we wanted to do, where were we sitting. It was like, this is what we're doing, and you're on and you're voting this way. It's like, and we hadn't even been on the beach for like 15 minutes, and like that plan was already in action, and it was just it held so strong. So that's when I took the opportunity I had a really tough decision to make. I like Brooke was someone I bonded with very closely there, and I know what Brooke added value to my game as a shield, but Lottie didn't, like, and especially with Blanche coming into the fold on that side, it really became like so black and white. And Lottie just was happy to go along with it. I think she'd kind of, she'd done enough in the early game that she didn't need to like pop her head up too much. And with Ash kind of leading everything here, I think she was happy to like, pump the brakes a little bit and just let Ash kind of take the, drive the train for a bit. And it was really, really tough for me to go, do I want to continue down this path and sit in this large majority, but like I'd have a little bit of influence. But if this is the way that Asha's running things with the blinkers on, and this is the way that she's speaking very openly about taking down Brooke, a returnee, I'm only going to be a sitting duck there. So it was a calculated decision, but at the same time, it was a no-brainer that like I knew that, Rich Loz wanted to get back with Mark, or Loz wanted to work with Mark at this time. Jackson was on the outs from Lottie and Ash. Brooke was valued to my game. So coming together with Mark, there was already motivation for that other side there, which almost seemed to have more numbers than my initial bounty tribe, which was taking a pillaging. So I took a big risk and left Lottie out of the vote. I would have loved to tell her about it, but if I had have, and that had gone back, that idol would have got played and that blindside wouldn't have happened. So it's like, that comes with a little bit of maturity to go, you know what, I will have to deal with the fallout. And it's kind of, we saw that moment where I'm like trying to run through the considerations about what does this mean for my relationship with Lottie. I'm like, what do you think about the fallout, Jackson? He's like, I don't give a shit. It's like, not my problem. I'm like, oh man, like it was all on me playing from the middle ground. Like, there was no one there to support me apart from myself at this point in time. Oh no, you've gone. You're still there. So yeah, it was really tough to get through that point and make that decision, but it paid off from there. And then Lottie was pretty gutted, obviously, off the back. And clearly. I had seriously let her down after everything that she had done for me in the game. Like it was a bit shit. And she had also helped, kind of keep my name out of the mix with, even with Asha and stuff in the early game. Like she was very much so looking out for me and protecting me. But when it came down to it, she was so hurt, but she turned it around. Like she called me out on it as calling a spade. And then I had a decision to make. And she gave me an out with Jackson. Like, if we take out Jackson next, but then knowing where my kind of potential was coming into merge, the discussion that I'd had with Lottie, I'm like, how do we play this? What's this looking like? And Mark was just sucking so much oxygen out of the game. And there was this conflict bubbling away, that the chirping between these tribes, between Asha, Lottie, and Keely and Faith, that was like going to be incredible, like two worlds absolutely colliding, and it would have been absolutely fireworks. And I wish we had like just seen this kind of play out, because it would have been fantastic to like just take a back seat and just watch these four strong, capable women go at each other and just take control of the game and blow it up. And I was very lucky that then I had the opportunity there where it became very clear with Lottie was like, Mark needs to go. Like I can't see myself working with Mark. So it was quite conflicted when I saw one of the Lottie's confessionals that said that was an option for her, because that would have certainly changed things for me. But my impression was like, I cannot work with Mark and his people. And from that point was like, I can take Lottie out here and I can get this monkey off my back and move forward, in this game with my new alliance there. And, my priorities at that point were like, Loz, Rich, Mark, Brooke, myself, Keely, and that was enough to really start and then, Jackson almost comes into the fold there. And Ben and, Faith, if she was still around, but they were kind of the solid numbers there away from where I'd been. And, because I had burn obviously Jackson and Blanche and, off the back of voting out Ash. So it made sense for me to go that way. And the damage had been done. But on that Lottie vote, I was the one who had the most to gain out of her going home at merge.
Yeah, it's there's so many wrinkles in the game where if certain votes go a certain way, it shifts everything. And just touching on that Asha moment as well, it really does talk about your positioning in the game. Yes, you could have made it to this point, or even maybe further had you stayed the course in that situation, but you're ceding power in that moment. Like, you're ceding your position, you're putting yourself in the middle, and you're almost putting yourself in the position of like these other players who are seemingly like the passengers. Well, we're calling them passengers on the season. They're openly calling themselves passengers on the season as well. And it's very easy to be a passenger or to take ownership and that's kind of what you did there. The one thing that comes a lot there was Rich, and we haven't really talked on Rich at all, but he is so instrumental, I think, to your game, and then the conversations through that mid period where you're avoiding tribal council, but Mark is on the other side and is there. You give him the necklace. We talked about like the rules, like where do the rules fit in Survivor? Like, make your own rules. But could you just like touch on the Richard of all?
Rich was instrumental to my game. We bonded from the second we hit the beach. He's a massive Survivor fan, and I don't think people like understand that. Like, he has traveled to Fiji and spent a night sleeping on a beach in Fiji that the US Survivor has filmed that before. That's his level of fandom. He is a walking encyclopedia. I was trying to play, like, I didn't tell anyone for so long when I was at 100 days, and it kind of, people were asking Rich these questions, like, and he was, I'm like, oh, Rich, like, how many days am I? He's like, well, it was 25 plus 36 or whatever. He's like, oh, you're 67 at the moment, or you came in at 67. Like, he was just so great there. He grabbed me on the beach on the first day and said I had a vision or a dream that I would be on a beach in Samoa with the Simon Mee, and here I am. And I was just like, you know what, that kind of connection is just one you can't shy away from. And I just became locked in with him. And as I kind of touched on earlier, he had so much potential to, if he wanted to take a leadership position, how much influence he would have had over the tribe. And his relationship with Loz was also very good for my positioning in the tribe, like very helpful there. After we got swapped, there are a couple of things on my mind here. I'm like, we've obviously decimated our numbers in the starting tribe so much more, and it's like anything we can kind of do to keep the other side safe is a good thing. So if I can, I personally, it made sense for me to, Lyndall or Rich. Like, I had a close relationship with Lyndall, but like Rich was closer. So like, if I do anything that can save Rich, I kind of will. Also, there's this chance of like public perception at this point in time is huge. And like, I want to stand for something. I want to show to like my people that I am loyal and that I can openly talk about Rich and what he's like, to be like, I want to do something for him and I'm willing to like stand for something in someone. So that was huge. Like, even in the bluffing brief, like, I'm not going to show my hand for a piece of pie or some lollies. I'm like, I can do something genuine and not bluff my hand, and to, build a relationship there. And then finally, it was a point of, put a negotiation point for Mark. Like, I can work out where Mark sits with me in this game by like, he had concerns about Brooke, I had concerns about Rich. And I'm like, I look after Brooke, you look after Rich. And we can both kind of test each other here and see how true this is. If he turns around and smokes Rich at any point, which he was said he was willing to do, then so be it. But if he's thinking ahead and not doing it, then fair enough. So it was like a good little litmus test there. And it became such an imperative relationship coming into merge for me. So we get to merge, and very quickly, we have the Lottie vote, which Loz and Rich kind of come on board for. And I think it was one of those nights that Rich sits down on the beach with Rich, Mark, Simon, Keely, and Brooke came for a little bit between naps. Like, Brooke loves her beauty sleep almost as much as Lyndall. And we sat down on the beach, and Rich essentially pleaded his allegiance to us, and to he was in with us. He has his great relationship with Mark. He has that Mark has kept him safe over the other tribe. He's obviously got everything that we've kind of charted and got each other through, and had the the idol sharing moment and stuff. It was pretty special there, laid it all out. We are in. We are, on within this alliance together. And we also knew that Loz was easily in there with like Loz's closest connections in the game, being both Rich and I. Then the very next day, when Ben has had his revelation, and the mark, the mark had just sucked so much oxygen out of the game, there was this notion from the newbies to to take their time and to pounce. Rich obviously came up to me and Loz very quickly and said, like, look, there's a group swinging at Mark, and kind of gave us there, and was like, I was very confused because like at the time they were the swing vote as far as I could see. They stuck with us, and this is not even 12 hours after we've sat down for hours at night laying out how we were going to run this end game for the next phase, to then turning around and saying, hang on, you're going to turn on Mark? Like, we just brought you into the inner sanctum. Like, what's going on here? And it was like the slightest breeze, you've faltered on us. So that was really tough. And then that night at the tribal council, like I sat in front of Rich, pulled him aside, and I called in all my favors. I'm like, Rich, everything that I've done for you, everything, like I need you to vote with us. And he told him that, the coral, like I'm telling him, hey, it's a fake idol. Like, it is. He's like, it's like, Simon, we will always, like, we may not always vote together, but I will always be with you. And I'm like, it's great. Like, but I need you right now. And right now you're not here for me. So that was heartbreaking. We come back down. Mark finds out this information. Or we know that Rich is no longer with us. It kind of confirms. And then Mark makes Mark's got a lot going on at this tribal council. It's obviously very, very loaded that, he's having these conversations with Ben. He's worked out that he's a target. He's holding so much power right now, and he's got a fake idol in his pocket from some idiot, and then a real idol that he's trying to work out what to actually do with. And Mark was very emotional, and he was irate at the time, and we said, do we stick to the plan? We go for Ben and take out the person who's targeting you? And there was no negotiating with him there. And he's like, no, it's got to be Rich. I'm like, what about Loz? Like, she was also in this kind of flip here. Like, what about Loz? And he's like, no, it's got to be Rich. And so, that was a regret for me, like, to vote out Rich at that point in time. But there was no negotiating with Mark in the headspace that he was in. And at the end of the day, it's unfortunate that Mark made a decision to weaken some of his allies who were pleading, allegiance to him, rather than, potentially looking a little bit further down the road and, maybe just take someone else out who was on the other side. And maybe it didn't need to be Ben. It could have been a Cameron or someone. But just to fire someone in the swing vote position was pretty tough. So I regret that decision. But waking up the next day on the right side of the votes, that was important. And right there and then, my game, everything that I had done to walk the tightrope and to thread the needle and to play the middle game, had come unraveled, because Loz and Rich were on this side, and then Mark, Brooke, and Keeley were on the other. And all of a sudden, everything that I had worked so hard to do had become fractured right at that point. And then we lost Rich from there, and the rest was history. So that was a really, really tough spot for me to be in the game, to go through so many days and having so many good relationships, to then it all falling apart in 10 minutes before a vote.
Yeah, it's a real balance for Mark, I think, because in weakening his allies and their potential to move forward into the game, he's also weakened his own position to move forward in the game. And I think in hindsight, I'd be interested where his reflections are. Like, I've seen his postseason chats, and it's like, it's mixed in terms of, I think, how he's perceiving that. But from my perspective, I said at the time, I thought the faith vote especially was like, I actually thought the faith vote had the biggest impact on you personally, on how that would actually play out, and just in terms of a number and how those numbers started to play out. And Survivor is a numbers game ultimately. Like, you need allies on your side to make decisions and to make moves. And if you're trying to draw someone over, it's much easier if you need one person, not two or three. And I just, there was a lot of small things that impacted to that point. And you mentioned Mark like quite a few times there as well. Coming back in, obviously, we spoke about in the preseason podcast, like, he contacted you prior to playing this season,
Mhm.
about some other things, about just being a returnee, and about behind the scenes stuff. And then he's out there, you're out there. You've got this like unique outside world connection, but it seemed as if through confessionals, at least from my perspective, that he kind of didn't see you as like the number one. He had Brook as his number one, which is totally fine. But
Mhm.
it seemed as if he wanted to have a weakened version of you there, almost as if you were a shield, but a weakened shield. And that's just my perspective.
I find it very interesting that you say that, Ryan, because I feel exactly the same way. Because look, Mark and I obviously had had an existing friendship beforehand. But then going out there, look, fine not to be his number one, like especially when we're not on the same starting tribes. Like, yeah, completely get that. But it was interesting to feel like we had a friendly, competitive relationship out there. And I don't think I let him get one up on me. Like any challenges that we went head to head against, like in the end games or fire or whatever. Like I think I came out on top, which was pretty cool. But I really felt like he had a chip on his shoulder towards me in some kind of way, that he never truly wanted me in my full power. Like, and just to have like, he didn't want me as a strong ally, but I was all in with him, and that was like really hard to see. And it's almost felt like he went out of his way a number of times to like make that known as well. So it's like he didn't need to flex the fake idol back at me when I was genuinely just trying to help him. And he never, like, it's not like he had told me ahead of time, like he told Brooke and Keely well and truly ahead of time about the real idol, and then it was only just before the tribal that he before we voted, that he showed me the real thing. So like it was kind of heartbreaking to see that, and like a number of different touch points kind of reaffirm that. And then even like that next vote where he's shopping me around straight away, like he's obviously in damage control at that point, but I definitely felt that out there as well, that like this isn't genuine. This isn't like he doesn't want me to fully spread my wings, even as a dedicated ally. And tough, like tough one to be in a position with. But I invested in a shield strategy. Like I invested in Mark from not just friendship. I invested in him at that point to go like, I want to be part of this Brooke, Mark, Keely, Loz, Rich thing, because like that Mark was sucking so much oxygen out of the game. And then Brooke was like such a target for like the Lottie Cameron, Blanche, kind of relationship. But it was like it made sense for me to be there. And I'm like, Mark wasn't. It felt to me like Mark wasn't playing to win.
Yeah,
it was. There were a lot of similarities between George. Like George was kind of sucking up so much oxygen, and Mark, that like it didn't feel like an end game and managing jury as well. He was like, I'm big, bold and outlandish, and this is how we're playing this time around. And I invested in being behind that for my own kind of safety.
It's the closest to George I think we've had on Australian Survivor. And I said to Mark in the exit with him, like I praised him, and in my Survivor pyramid, TV character Mark was excellent. Like I cannot get away from TV character Mark. And I think the way he presented, I wouldn't be shocked if there's a third time for him at some point in the future.
Oh, I'd love to see it as well.
And I don't think it's just you. And I want to just put that caveat on there around relationships, because we saw that a little bit with like Faith and Keely as well, like trying to get Sally in. Like he really he tries to get his people. He wants his people to almost be like this is my perspective. My perspective is Mark wants his people to be the number one for them to him. So he wants you to say, I'm your number one, and kind of be there. So even like the Don one, Caleb for a period, I think he probably overestimated that, obviously, in the ultimate end. But Faith as well, less so Keely. I feel like Keely kind of had her stretches, and she's an excellent player, who we've not talked about yet. But it is fascinating when you have this pre-existing relationship that extends beyond Survivor, and it does, like in your world, like you've had a proper connection with Mark and still do, but I felt as if it was almost a detriment to his own game, and then obviously a detriment to your game, the cascading effect of those decisions. And it does talk about if you're gonna write the narrative of this season, Mark he was the I guess the central protagonist in this. And he had his villain arc, and it was great TV.
Oh, it was amazing. And amazing to see him like play it out there. Like,
but it hits the personal as well, right? Like it hits the personal like aspect as well, which is what I think the opposite of what your strategy was this game, where like the physical aspect obviously played its part post that period in your last week, but the social element was like the key, I felt, to you trying to navigate through.
Yeah, massively. Like it was so it was imperative for me. That's like, having the right people on board and on side. And it sucked that something that I'd worked so hard to cherish was then taken away by someone else at a point in time where it felt like it was depowering me at the same time. Like, and it just felt like a rash and emotional decision at that point, where there could have been a better option for us both. But I don't think Mark will. I don't think he'll ever say he'll regret that or think it was the wrong thing to do. But it was it was a bloody tough one from my point. And I don't regret going against his decision there. I just regret that it was rich, and I couldn't save that at the point in time. But there was obviously from Mark's strategy, he made it very clear about why that worked for him. And I got to respect him for that there, because it was what he wanted, and it's what he got. And that's if that's what you want to do to move forward in the game, that's a win for him.
Yeah, I guess that talks about you've used the term a couple of times, suck the oxygen. I guess that's that's taking. What does that mean then? I won't hypothesize what it means. What does that mean to you?
So I think I played with George, right, and played the heroes versus villains with George, but I was always against him because I never wanted to be behind him. So this time I was behind the main character as opposed to pitched against them. And it was interesting that I ended up being against them both times, regardless of what position I was in. George, I call it sucking oxygen. Is you're living rent free in someone's head, you know. And when you can do that from the other tribe, that's impressive. So I lived through, the first instance that we saw of what was it? George did it, AJ did it. The hostage situation. I lived through the first iteration of the hostage situation on Heroes versus Villains that we then saw in was it Brains v Brawn 2? Yeah. And it's one thing to have a main character have an impact on your own tribe. It's another thing for them to have an impact on the entire game before merge. And I've seen Mark do that, and I've seen George do that. And I think Mark was sucking more oxygen out of the game than George was, which is a huge testament to the size of the game that Mark was playing. But it was crazy how fired up we had people Lottie and Arsha that just wanted him gone so badly that there was nothing that we could do from our side. But apart from say maybe take out a Brook, but it was incredible just seeing how much Mark was living rent free and people on my tribes on their side. So it was pretty impressive. And I was for Mark, I was for my boy, my Brisbane guy, I'm man, you go, you do your thing. I'm stoked for you. Hope this doesn't blow up on my face, but just go on, you do it. And I have so much respect for someone who can go off and play a game the way that Faith did, the way that Mark does. That's so big, bold, and boisterous and outlandish and confident. That is something that I just can't ever do. I can't think quick enough on my feet to control a room, a tribe like that. I have my own certain ways of doing it. So I love that aspect as watching as a character and as seeing it play out on the beach. It's just wild.
Keely for me is fascinating me throughout the whole season. How good is she? Am
Yeah.
I underestimating, overestimating? But she
Nah,
seems like a great ally. I loved her conversation with you the other week where like you guys are talking about, we could work together. She's saying like, Simon, you're very smart. I thought that was very smart from her to just like feed the ego as well, which is totally fine. It's a good strategy. But can you talk about like Keely out there?
she's amazing. She's so good. Like I think Lottie was fantastic in terms of like one of the best I've seen as a newbie, like grasping the game. But Keely
Yeah.
was just on another level, and
Yeah.
there is a reason why she is just flat out called a returnee now, and
Yeah.
like everyone just goes, it's not the returnees plus Keely, it is just the returnees. Like she just got it like that well. And she has like a killer Keely. She's got like a killer instinct. She has this wicked sense of humor and operates within a very small bandwidth, similar to Harry, where
Yeah.
like the highs and lows are all very very monotone, but like hilarious when you're there. And there's a softer side of Keely that we haven't really seen so much. Probably more that that wicked sense of humor that really completes her as a character, but just very switched on, very intelligent, and absolute boss woman who's flies very close to the sun in her in her professional career, and is just grasped the game with both hands and just got it from the start. And just seeing how seamlessly she's been able to like navigate through the game, but tell people like directly to their face that she's voting for them and stuff, and like but be able to laugh it off at the same time. Like it's a really impressive skill to watch her in action there. And we really bonded on the very first night of merge. And she was very good at playing into people's egos, and you're just giving people like just building people up. Like it's a real skill to have to like give people like really good props and everything. And like she spent the whole night before like on the beach with me, like you're saying like Simon, you're so smart, you're so intelligent, like, and I'm laughing it off because like if you know me, like she's taking the piss, right? And so I'm like trying to like just de-threaten and throw it all back in her face. And then the next day when she's doing that, I've had 24 hours of this. I'm like, okay, like we need to like kind of stop it. Like I don't need to bite every time that you do this, but that's the time that they show on camera where it's like Simon's just loving it. But she did a very good job of being able to build those like a genuine relationship and connection very quickly. And I don't think she didn't come in with a conception to try to be like, she wasn't pushing, is Lottie someone you want to get rid of? But like we had a bond very quickly that kind of worked out where our mutual benefit would be, where I was able to trust her very early on and be like, you know what, I'm going to offer up my ride or die at a point in time to a very new relationship that could easily blow up in my face, but knowing that there is benefit for Keely there. But she could have turned around to Lottie and said, hey, Simon's shopping your name out, what's the go there? Like, so she could have gone either way. But my read on it was that there was history and conflict between Lottie and Keely, that those two wouldn't kind of go head to head. But that was still Keely still wasn't exactly aware of where my relationship was with Lottie, and she didn't know the ins and outs of the Arsha vote and being left out there. So it was like there was bits of information, but it was enough for her to know that there was some kind of value there. And she has even spoken about what pre-merge that she was looking to move in with a new the sister wives were looking for a new man. So like it just worked really well. But to see her operate and spread her wings is pretty incredible. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do throughout the rest of this game from the jury bench.
Yeah, the sister wives thing is fascinating because they seemed like she was very keen to work with you. That seemed to be the vibe.
Yeah, and we had
a great thing.
And we had a great bond on when we had that challenge together. Like that was incredible. There are a couple of things there that challenge are probably worth like talking about. Like we went in there and like I remember walking into that group challenge. We said like, oh, let's just try not to spill the beans. Beauty and the Beast, like, let's try to, like, keep it on the down low. And Ben and Jackson and I were like, okay, let's do this. Within like 2 minutes of like this challenge started, Jackson's like completely spilt the beans to Mark and told him like everything. And Mark turns to me and like, Beauty and the, like, I don't think he even called out the alliance name, like Beauty and the Beast, like, who's the fifth? And I was like, what? Like, this is what he's like, oh, and then Asha, yeah. I'm like, how do you know everything? And then the target as well. And Jackson's like, blah, 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 blah. That was wild. Like we had a really good bond. I bonded really well with Faith at that kind of point. Like, she was just such a straight shooter there, and I was aware of what her relationship was like with Ben at that point. So like there was just another like really good in there that just felt like it would have worked for me. So I was looking forward to that working out post merge. But then that night that she turned to me in tribal council and said, "You don't need to give the necklace to Rich." And that was her being genuine, being like, hey, we've got this relationship, and just telling me so deadpan that I didn't need to do it, and being so firm on it, being like, and from her perspective, she was trying to build trust. But the way that I interpreted it was like, I can just do this anyway. And it was like really, I don't know, it felt like a place that I had been before in the game when someone's telling me not to do something.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't trust that. But it was so genuine from Faith. And that was just like just one of those things where it's like we didn't have the relationship there to have the connection at that point in time. But I loved watching, like, I think watching this season back, like, you get to watch the other tribe do their thing. And I loved watching Faith as a character, because she was one of those big, bold players, confident players that just did it in her own unapologetic way. And I was so like drawn to that as a viewer, which was so bloody cool.
Yeah, it's funny. Can you do that? Well, can you do it anyway? You did do it anyway. You did hand off the necklace, regardless of.
I had to. Yeah.
No, regardless of whether it's a rule or not. But we've spoken about this in the past. Like, sometimes to survive, you have to make your own rules. Like, you rewrite the rule book the way you wish to write it, and the producers will say yes or no based on what they think is going to be good TV as well. So that is, I think, one of your strengths in this game has been that you have stretched the Survivor rulebook to a way that others are maybe a little bit fearful or just haven't thought about it. And the necklace is a prime example of it. Rocks is a prime example of it, Simon. And it's like, this is if this is a legacy standpoint from my perspective as a super duper fan of Survivor, that's one of the things I really think can be characterized as like, who was Simon as a Survivor player? The physical aspect we'll talk about is huge, but like rewriting the rule book on the fly is huge. And I know people probably are sticklers like, no, there are rules for a reason, but ultimately Survivor is a game show. It's a TV show.
There is a rule that sits very high up in the rules. I think there's like there's 105 rules or something like that. And I think Rocks is around number 84, and it goes to A, B, C, D, and E, but it probably could go to F now. But there's a rule very high up that says, like, at the end of the day, all these rules are at the producer's discretion.
Of course they are.
And it is something, there's like the physical, social, physical, social, strategic sides of this game. But I think there's an element of like creativity as well. And I like, part of my legacy, I'm so proud of the fact that I have like broken this game number of times and pushed boundaries and come up with some like blue sky thinking ideas that no one else has, considered before. And in 12 seasons of Australian Survivor and 50 seasons of, US, like, it's just something that I've created out of nothing that I've turned into my turn to my advantage. Whether it worked or not, like, doesn't matter. But like, it just has had enough of an impact on the game to change the course of it. And it's like, we will see that conversation come up again. And I would love to see the rules get adjusted and amended to have, if you ever do go to Rocks, that you can take someone else's rock. I would love to see, because I think that's a very unique social element. And, I think that like, it obviously hasn't happened before, but like on that moment, like when we were sitting there, and I think you would have heard this when I spoke to Haley and a couple of other podcasts, but like, I didn't know that I was out of the clear. Like, and I said that I knew there was against the rules to take another rock, but I knew there was a chance that, I was going to play dumb and be like, I didn't know that I wasn't able to take two, and see how that played out. But when David goes, okay, time to go to rocks or whatever, and I go to put my hand in the bag, he's like, what are you doing? Well, like, if I had gone out there, but there was every chance the producers would just let me go for it and potentially take a second rock just for the TV moment to see if I would do it or not.
100%. They're making you pick 2 rocks. Like, in my mind, like, I feel like they're making you pick 2 rocks.
So I would love to see in the future someone actually take 2 rocks and it be within the rules. Like, that would be really cool. So I'm so proud. Like, in a week that I go out, I'm so proud that I have a huge social move to my name with the Jackson flip. I'm stoked that I have this, rocks concept under my belt, and I won 4 of the 5 of the 6 challenges within the week. Like, pretty freaking wild. Like, great week to go out on.
Yeah, it is. I'm conscious of time as well, so please feel free to add whenever. I'm good. I'm going to show you something courtesy of our friends at Paramount CBS. Actually, not Paramount CBS, but Paramount Skydance now. Can you see this, Simon?
I can.
Perfect. Crazy. I don't know how you feel when you see that stuff, but like,
yeah, tingles, man. Tingles.
On the back of Operation 99 to target you or get you out on day 99, when you actually get to see, like, what is it like to relive those moments when it's like, hey, like, this is such a big thing, and I did fight through. I won 5 of the 6 challenges in that last week. I had my back against the wall, and a part of your game which you didn't necessarily have to show, you had to really pull out, and not against like anyone. You're versing Brooke in all these challenges, who is arguably known as the best. Yeah, the GOAT of challenges in Survivor. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, absolute tingles to rewatch that and what it meant for me. And I think, like, it stems from being a pre-merger in my first game. They're going on, like, from that to come back and not have things go my way, and just I've been through some of the darkest days I've ever had out on that island, but to keep showing up and to keep persisting and to never roll over and die from the bottom, it's like, yeah, it's just a credit to who I am. It's just nice to see, catch a break and catch a win there and pull it out when it counts. And on an endurance challenge as well, like, pretty freaking epic. Like, it's a really special moment just because it does mean so much to me. And it hasn't been easy. It has not been easy. I think I was chatting to Luke, who's obviously in the 100 Club as well, about what it is. And, it's one thing to make it that far, but to do it like Luke, in a way, like, to not do it quietly is pretty impressive as well. Because a lot of the time, the loud players don't always hang around for the longest period of time. And I'm really stoked that I managed to, it reached that milestone. I didn't realize how much I didn't realize before the season how much I wanted to get there, because I was so concerned about going home early. And then when it actually became viable that I could reach it, I'm like, oh, and potentially to fall so close as well, like, to failing. Like, it wasn't ever a given. So I did have to fight, and I did have to win my way there, and to pull it out when it counted the most was pretty damn special, man.
Yeah, to pull it out in the moment when you have to pull it out, to actually win, to keep yourself in the game, to give you the option of the Ben vote as well. Like, it creates space in the game to actually get you through to the point where you can come from a minority into a potential majority, which doesn't eventuate. It's so hard. The Brooke relationship, we've dithered around, but not really talking about. It was close throughout, but ultimately she decides to not go with you at a 4-4 split, which potentially could have been, she was safe, she had immunity as well. How have you reconciled that? Because from my perspective, I know you said this and we've talked about it offline, but regardless of whether she wins or she's out next, like, I don't personally think it's a great move for where she's at, because you have to kind of Mike Holloway it, which is a reference to Survivor 30, and, like, just win out. You have to win out at this point to make it. You lose, you're throwing away a potential majority. How have you tried to reconcile all of that, because it's such a big moment, going to rocks and having the first rock draw in a Shines 5 history and seeing how that would play out. But how have you like at first, like the relationship there, and then reconciled the moment of it breaking down in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. As I said, like I even saw my my car ride back to Jury Villa. Like I was, Brooke took the shot at the moment when she had it, because sometimes that doesn't come easily. And I've been the only thing standing in her way of a lot of those challenge wins, because she is the best challenge beast that we've ever seen. And she holds that title. I don't blame her, but on paper I also think it sucks. Like, we worked so freaking hard to get off the bottom. She wasn't at risk there when she had the necklace of rocks. Like, we were in a better spot that there's there was a 60% chance that we were going to be better off, because it was more likely that someone from the other tribe was going to go home if we went to rocks. So it was pretty devastating on paper, but I understand it. From there, I obviously, this game is still live, playing out, and it will reflect my feelings at the time. And I think I said that I want Brooke to win, and I want this to be a stepping stone for her, or I want her to go out next. And because that will help me sleep at night, to know that someone I have the utmost respect for goes the distance, or it's a blatant I told you so. This blew up in your face kind of moment. So we'll have to see. Well, hopefully one of those plays out, and she doesn't fall short of either of those.
Yeah, it's such a hard one, and we'll see how it does play out. And it's why I actually really like the series that Tennis doing with Nikai Danza and Shawnee this season, in terms of the post game. It's so good, because it's it's in the moment. It's not people have reflections, time passes, you think about it. It's this is how I actually thought in the moment. This is how there's no hiding.
Get a chance to amend your stories, mend relationships, whatever. It is raw and it is juicy. I actually haven't watched mine yet. I need to go back and get there, but it's been busy over the last 48 hours. But
no, same.
I love as someone who has played with people who watched them change their story, as they came out, directly after playing, then after it goes to air, it is so pure. So I'm stoked we've got this. So, and loving it from Sean and Nick.
So the vote, you go in, your intention, your understanding, do you think even at the revote, when you're going to the revote, do you feel like this is going to rocks? Where's your headset at?
I didn't know if the whole going, if it was going to be on Keeley for me to go rocks. I wasn't sure about that. I'm this can really go either way. Do they just dump on me there and they just take a shot and see? Because there's still a unanimous decision. And that's still a huge part of the rocks process without getting to rocks. So, there was every point there that they could have skewered me there. So it's such a risk that it was the rocks would have been the mechanism. So they vote Keeley to then take me out. I don't know. I don't think that Cameron or anyone from the other side really understood that rocks mechanism, but I know that Jackson did. And thank God for the magic of TV, he kind of let that one slide. And he turned to me at the tribal council and said, I will take my own rock. I'm in this alliance as much as you are. But as reality, he actually knew that he didn't have to. And I wasn't aware that he kind of knew that, and I was hoping he didn't ask. So there was a bit of TV magic there. I was cautious and nervous. At the same time, in the same breath that I say, Mark, it's so much oxygen out of the game. I filled the power vacuum there, and being on the bottom, winning immunities, making the most of all my moments and the speeches that I was given, trying to I initially gave that rock speech on the mat before a challenge, and they showed it at the they showed it during the reward, but I wanted everyone in the tribe to know that, to get them thinking, because there were so many passengers at the time that I need someone to think about this and seize the opportunity. And I didn't know how the trouble was going to go. And as I said, I still wasn't sure if the producers would make me take a rock if we got there. And I'm the relieving thing there is that I still went at the hands of Brooke, at the hands of not a passenger. So there's still a little bit of like sweetness there to, to how it was. And, at the end of the day, like I still made it in the top, top third of the game. I still got to compete for, individual immunity necklaces and prove myself there and write my name into the history books as a challenge beast and a well-rounded player. It's pretty incredible. So I'm stoked that, I still got that opportunity, and and Brooke was the one to benefit from it.
So making to that point, do you have you got redemption? Is that the question? Have you found redemption?
100%. Yeah. Like I have shown myself and my, I have never played a perfect game. Never could, never would. I don't think anyone ever plays a perfect game, but I have showcased that, I wanted to prove myself that I can play this game as a social player. I can play this game as a strategic player. I mean, I'm not just the dumbest, most hapless player of all time, which I a persona that I leaned into. I never really truly believed. I knew that I was one of an absolute challenge beast, but now I have cemented myself as one of the best. I won. I think I won 21 challenges this season. The only one who's won more challenges in a season is Brian Lake at 22, and Brian went to went to the final three. Yep.
Yeah.
Kalen won 7 in a season and the final 3. So like to have that there and to win more immunities at a time when there's more people in the game as well, like it's huge. And so like the ratio that I'm on, I actually had a Redditor reach out to me this week and say that they've been kind of keeping track on US and Australia challenge records, and I am sitting number 2 in all time behind Aussie as a challenge with my challenge record, with my win-loss ratio and stuff. So in both tribe and then individual games. So it's that's just not a term that I can call myself anymore. It's I have statistics behind that. So it's that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this is where I should shout out the Useless Australian Survivor Instagram page, because that is I love the stats from that page.
So there's Useless does a great job, and I always call him useful Australian Survivor Facts, because he's been fantastic, and I've flicked through so many questions to him over this season in particular when I knew I was up for a couple of competing records. But then there's a guy out of the US who's keeping track of them as well, and some pretty in-depth detail. So I've got him to flick across that spreadsheet, and I've enjoyed having to poke around there. That's a nice little self-ego stroke.
No, I love that. That's so good. That's why I love that. And that's the good thing about the Survivor community in general. Like, there are so many people who are so passionate about the show and so passionate about the minute details to it. And you see that manifest in players like Rich this season as well. So it's so cool that you got to do that. You've spoken about this retirement. Is this is it? You're done. I'm done. I just saw Colby come back after 15 years. So you're telling me this is Simon Mee, the snuffed cap is retired. You're 100 days and it's completely done.
Yeah, I'm done. And look, I think we do see people come out of retirement, say 15 years down the track, whatever. But I'd love to see this franchise alive and kicking down the track. But for now, I'm retired, mate, and it's nice to be able to hang up the bar from the head held high after such a wild journey. And this game has given me so much, and it's been a really nice week to be able to reflect on not my exit but my career, and what I have achieved, how I have been able to get my redemption, how I have been able to have some moments of brilliance between some monumental fumbles, to have some things go right for me this season, and to just to earn that title and to play up to my full potential in a way that other people didn't ever think was possible. After I threw that create the stray vote on Brooke, Simon up to his old ways, Simon made dumbest move ever, why would you turn on your alliance there? And then to see everyone eat their words 24 hours later when I jumped off the top rope, with the Jackson play, incredible, to have that. I've had such a journey, and now I'm done. I need to focus elsewhere in my life. And yeah, I'm pretty content. We have some phenomenal players in Australia so far, and yes, call me biased, but I agree with everyone else in saying that Australian Survivor is the best in the franchise at the moment, and let's share it around, give some other players a go, and I very much so look forward to watching All Stars 2 or Australia versus the World 2 from my couch, and I can go back to enjoying this game that I love so much without the stress of actually being in it. And it also means that the ongoing relationships that I have with alumni and players will be genuine from here on out. Like, I don't need people in my, just the fake bullshit of, keeping up appearances just in case we ever end up back on an island together somewhere. Or I don't need that in my life. I've got more important things going on. So, this game has given me so much, but now I'm really ready to share, put my energy elsewhere, and a lot of that will go back to my family.
Yeah, I love that, and that's why we did speak post seeing your episode, the final episode, and one of the things I said to you offline was like, in a really weird way, I kind of love that your family were involved in your final episode, because I think it's like that full circle, like, of who you are, like, competing to the death and challenges, but the family behind it, and it's the story that so many people don't necessarily see. It's the real life Simon, and who you are, like, day to day, and your family is the number one priority, and to get to go out there and play Survivor is such a cool little wrinkle and story, part of the journey. But and it'll be great in the future for Bon and everyone else to see, but like, it's only one part of your story. It's only one part of who you are as a person. So it's cool that chapter can be put a bookmark in there for now.
Yeah.
And
there is one caveat, and that is in 2050, if there's a blood versus water for like parents and Survivor Nepo babies, like, I would, I'd love for Bond to be able to play. And then there's so many players from my era who have all just had babies recently. There's Shawnee, Nick's got got an offspring, a tribe of offspring there that are growing up.
AK's got twins.
I know there's so many. Haley's just had another one. There's so many great players. I think that down the track it'll be like a Legends and I don't know, Legends and Little Ones season.
Legends and Little Ones. I like that. Bookmark that 2050. I'm keen for that season to come out.
Like, hey, Lee's doing pretty bloody well at 50, right? He's kicking around.
Yeah.
Oh, he's always been my inspiration. So yeah, there's something there. But like, yeah, it's well and truly done.
No, I love that. And look, you talk about the player community there as well, but on like behalf of the fan community, I think it's come out a little bit in this chat today. But the fact that you have made so much time for me personally, but also there are so many other podcasters who I'm sure would say the same thing, that we are very grateful for the time you've spent in terms of giving us a chance to chat to you and get an insight into what Survivor is like. The Reddit community as well, like, you going and doing the AMA over there as well. I know that it's just too...
It's been wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Trust me, I get it. I really get it. But I think it's, while you might think that is normal, I can guarantee you, as a Survivor super fan, it's not regular that we have survivors who are willing to actually extend themselves out into those spaces, and understandably so, because a lot of the stuff they get can be negative in terms of where the sources come from. But I think, on a personal level, I'm really grateful that not only for my show, but for podcasts more generally, and just the online community, how much access behind the scenes you've like actually given people. And that's, I think it's really a really positive, amazing part of the character quotation marks of who you were out there on the show. So thank you for doing that. And on a personal level, thank you for letting me be part of your journey from Winner's Pick to 100 days. I feel like I'm good at picking good survivors. So I'm glad I got that one right. So I'll tick that, tick as an okay thing. But thank you, genuinely, mate, on the podcast for being a legend.
Oh, mate, and thank you in return. Like, you have been such a huge part of my journey, and there are a couple of being it from this side, like, being able to play and then be able to give back. It's still so important to me, and as someone who is such a fan of it in the first place, like, I can't stray from my roots. And I was always a Survivor US fan, but I was a true Australian Survivor fan. Like that, that's really lit the spark for me there. And and it's these experiences, like in being able to, how welcomed I have been onto your podcast and stuff. Like, it has enriched my experience and added so much value to it as well. And I don't think you kind of realize, in these and this isn't not quite a deep dive, but it's getting on the verge of it. But like how therapeutic this is for the players as well. Like, it is a huge outlet for us to talk through our thoughts and put everything out there and dump a bit of trauma. It's huge. So yeah, thank you for everything that you do there. I'll take a moment to shout out to a couple of the people who have made it huge for me. Is like the memes guys, Survivor memes. Thank you. Useful Australian Survivor facts. Like, these kind of community pages are so just. I love what they do for the players and the game, and it means so much to, I don't know, me and the community. Like, I love it, and I love this community here. And you don't even have to like me as a player, but the fact that you like this game enough to talk about it or tweet about it or go into the deep dark corners of Reddit about it. Like, I freaking love it. So thank you to the fans who spend all this time listening to me waffle on.
No, hugely. And that is honestly, it's part of the thing I love about Survivor is like, there are there are so many people who express views on Survivor, whether it's like a podcast form, like even Phil from your first season is like doing amazing things about it, who I love both of them. And there are so many outlets out there who just talk about Survivor, and that is the reason that Survivor has been able to stand the test of time is because of people like that who are really engaged. Like, the Survivor community, we're crazy. Like, we are a bit crazy, but it is meant in the most positive way. But it's funny. I'll just end on this: is that you talked about you were a fan of US Survivor, but you're a huge fan, like you're a big fan of Australian Survivor. And one of the things I've noticed in the exit interviews this season, especially, is when I've talked to people about Survivor, they're not talking about a US Survivor anymore. Like, their fandom, which is not negative. I don't mean that as a negative thing at all. I mean, it's a huge positive because the players now are looking back historically at Australian Survivor and the legacy that people like you have left throughout. And it's now like, hey, I want to be the next Simon, or I want to be, the next Golden God or George or whoever it is, Haley. Like, these are the icons, quotation marks, of Australian Survivor. And it's no longer looking at the US product, it's looking at the Australian product. And these are the inspirations for people. Harry, another one. Like, these are big iconic players now that Australian fans can connect with and resonate with. So congrats on making 100. Congrats on playing 3 times, on retiring in a way that's really positive. And I'm grateful that we did the podcast before the season, and it wasn't a negative. It wasn't first boot. It's like, what the
yeah, I know, mate. Thank you for everything. And I got so much more from this experience. Plus, I got so much more from this experience than I ever thought was ever possible. So you got hell of a lot more than just redemption. I wrote that legacy, and it is a nice little ego stroke that maybe that Mount Rushmore gets made, and then my face is on it. So that's pretty cool. So hopefully I have done enough to inspire the next generation of Survivor players. Over to you. Just go out and let her rip, and show me some creativity and some blue sky thinking, and don't forget about the people who paved the way for you, because I am so grateful and thankful for, in my experience, the players from seasons 1 to 5 who paved the way for my journey, and the players there, because they're just what they did and what they went through to set up what season 6 looks like for even us as like a product and stuff. Like, there was a lot of suffering there, so it's pay it forward and pay it back.